Bang, cukup nggak sih? Cuma setengah sini. Udah, gue udah ngecas setengah deh. Aduh,
I don't know.
Ibu, nanti pakai ini tapi pakai mikrofon juga. Saya streaming.
Dia pakai
Yeah, it's
Oh, microphone.
yes, it's microphone, but use this as well.
I think we are a small room. We can talk like this even. You think?
But I think it's ya. Gimana? Nggak bisa. Ini berarti buat ya.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, nice. Oh yeah, that's. I didn't know I do this. Yeah, works. Okay. Makasih.
So this is part of the production, maybe? It's part of the presentation.
Not so much like general, but some parts of it, yes. General knowledge and administration of Islam, basically, or management, if you want. Hmm.
Okay, good afternoon. Thank you. So, halo, everyone. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. One of the reasons because you just finish your initial stage, depending your title for the proposal and I'm going to put in that. And welcome to the new students. So this is our Brownbag Series number 30, where the usual students and the ideas and learning on how to research, planning, search. Or also it can be the platform to stimulate students, yeah, for everyone who are attending the Brownbag Series. Okay, so we have here, so you're already by reading at the end. I'm lecturer in Faculty of Social Sciences. I teach politics and international relations, but there is a kind of cross pollination, yeah. You can call it like history of international relations. What my research area. So we have here our speaker today is Jan-Markus Vömel. Dr. Vömel received a PhD from University of Contestations. Before being postdoctoral fellow at BRIN, he was an assistant professor for Western European and European history at the University of Labor in 2023. So you're still there. And he was also a researcher in two projects on the Turkish Islamic community of Turkish documentation of political Islam in Vienna, 2023. His latest work are new, some of them titled Islamic Community in Turkey, 1950 to 2000, published in studies in contemporary Islamic. And then there's numerous forthcoming works, one of them titled All for Islamism in Turkey, from Islamic nationalism to third-way internationalism and high Islamism. These will be published next year in Folklore History Journal. So as you see, Dr. Jan is doing kind of multidisciplinary approaches from history to politics and also international relations. So it's kind of interesting subject that we have today, Islam in Turkey, state controls the society and submission, kind of more into domestic political Turkey. So yeah, with further ado, we give the time for you, one hour, and then follow with Q&A question and answer. Okay.
Strict timing. Okay, should I use this or also? I think this is good. Everyone, okay. Thanks everyone for coming, and thanks especially Bonia for inviting me. It's a really wonderful opportunity for me to be here and speak here. I'm trying, while I'm fellow at the moment at BRIN, I'm kind of trying to do an Indonesia tour by having different speaking engagements in different kind of universities. So if you have connections to other universities, connect me, invite me, and I will speak on Turkey or different things. So it's a useful thing for me to get to know the country and different people, different universities. And it's also great to see just how different the atmosphere, for example, here on my last talk, it was in UIN, Sunan Kalijaga in Jogja. Very different atmosphere, very young students, but also very motivated, very interested. And yeah, it's like I said, it's a great opportunity to speak on this topic. And like Nia just said, normally my interest is more in kind of cultural history and the kind of inner aspects of a social movement. Yeah, the Islamic social movement or Islamist social movement, yeah, basically political Islam and the history of Turkey from a kind of inside perspective. But what I will present today is a very different approach. It's more an outside approach, more institutional history. And what we can see and learn from this specific institution that I will introduce in a minute for Turkish history and culture and social life and sociology of modern Turkey, the modern Turkish Republic, which just celebrated its centennial foundation 100 years ago in 1923. So an alternative title, by the way, of this presentation could also be something like, yeah, the clash, basically, the clash between monistic or monocultural idea of modern Turkey projected by the state onto its citizens, clashing with a fundamentally different reality on the ground, which is more multicultural, more pluralistic, and things like that. Ah, yeah, I have to use this. Okay. So basically, Islam or religion in general, it was the most basic and the most fundamental point of contention, really, in the late Ottoman era in the clash of different political ideas that were debating and clashing about how to react to the European hegemony in different fields of politics, military, the sciences, and so on, and all the kind of different challenges that were involved with this huge and fundamental challenge at the time. And of course, then, as you will probably know, the Kemalist side favored a very secularizing approach and answering this question in a kind of way that's also looking at European role models, like, for example, mainly in this case, France. And so the creation of this institution that I will talk about today, the DIYANET, was in this context. So the explicitly stated goals were to create in a kind of socio-cultural engineering process conducted by the state and centrally organized within the state to create this kind of Islam that would fit in with these goals, to create the modern Turkey that would be able to compete with the West again. So the stated goals, and we know that very well, and you can, if you learn the Turkish language or just read translation, you can read this in this speech, right, that you see here. It was a kind of day-long monologue, basically, a huge legitimizing speech called the Nutuk, of Mustafa Kemal Atatürk, basically laying all the groundwork for the new republic. And it was really the kind of radicalized tendencies of the late Ottoman period that he put into play and into force then in the new republic. So really a model, you could say a model of secularism that is very much different from other secularisms around the world. It's a kind of secularism where religion and state is not separated, but religion is governed or under the stewardship of the state. So it's really something fundamental different than a separation, right? It's more control, and therefore also my title, my general title. And yeah, of course, then later in Turkish history, the Islamists came in and they project the complete opposite model. They said to successfully modernize and to compete with Europe, we need to found our own modernity based on religion. So it's the exact inversion of the Kemalist project that came into play later, and is also in a kind of different way, like a kind of post-Islamist, if you want, way, today's governing party, the AKP, coming from that point. So then you go to the next one. So in order to achieve this goal, there was a fundamental institution created. And this institution basically governs all of Islam in Turkey, at least on the paper, in ideal form, yeah? We will see that it is actually, of course, not the case. And I guess luckily is not the case because, of course, it's not a totalitarian system or something like that. But the mindset and the ideal, it was that this body should govern all of Islam in Turkey. So it's a centralized body controlled by the presidency, or in different periods of Turkish history by the prime ministry, and really monopolizing worship in Turkey. So all mosques in Turkey, all imams that are hired, and even the Jummah prayer, the Jummah khutbah, is centrally written in this institution. And this governing body has around today, in today's Turkey, 90,000 mosques operating in the country, and around 2,000 abroad, half of which in my country, in Germany, around 1,000 mosques operated. So each Friday, in each of these mosques abroad and in Turkey, the same khutbah is read, one central script. So that's just to illustrate the amount or the degree of centralizing that is inherent in this mindset, right? So that's an interesting point. And also to basically enforce this monopoly, other forms of practice, and maybe the tariqas, which have a very firm rooting in Turkish history, and also were supported by the central state in the late Ottoman period, were then immediately banned. And by the way, this institution was established just half a year after the formation of the republic itself. So that's also showing the urgency which with the Kemalists were forming this institution to implement their social engineering ideas with this body governing Islam in Turkey. And then also within this body, you don't have a plurality of different schools or different approaches or something like that. The DIYANET, which is also part of the idea, is teaching one single Islam, basically, all over the country, with no different regional variations. And I will talk about these variations then when I come to the challenges in the second part of my talk. So this means also that this body, which is directly attached, like I said, to the presidency, it's of course extremely volatile, to political utilization. And this problem also kind of creates like a low-level continuous debate or kind of discomfort, I would say, in society. Because there's always a group is at the top and controls the body then and implements its vision of Islam in this body, of course. And then you have all the other groups in Turkish society which are not pleased by this approach. So by this kind of monistic and the one aspect, one Islam, one nation, one citizen, one flag, one religion, and all that, with this approach, you have this kind of monolithic approach. And by the way, it's also very different if you would like to compare to approaches in Indonesian history. So in Turkish nationalism, you generally have this approach of this monolithic setting. And of course, this is forced on a society which is not monolithic at all. So this creates a constant tension and constant discomfort, basically, just quickly, just to mention some statistics and facts about this body governing basically all of Islam in Turkey. The budget in this year was allocated at 36 basically 36 billion Turkish lira, which equals around 1.25 billion US dollars, just so you have a kind of imagination. And to even get a better grasp of it, Van Brunissen and I could recommend this article to you, because this article compares the management of Islam in Turkey with the management of Islam in Indonesia, combining the specializations of Professor Brunissen, of course. And he compares Turkey allocated, basically 3 billion euros figures now for 2018, and he combines the DIYANET with other forms of religious education. So it's not just the DIYANET going into this budget, but also different more. And Indonesia, on the other side, despite, that's of course the point here, having about 3 times as many Muslims in the country, but just a slightly higher figure investing in the governance of Islam. And if you want to read anything about this topic, I would recommend you to check this article on the governance of Islam in Turkey and Indonesia by Professor van Brunissen. Employees, 130,000. And then, as I mentioned, 90,000 mosques around that number in Turkey, and then around 2,000 mosques in Europe mainly, some in other places abroad, but mainly in the main regions where Turkish labor migration took place. So it's mainly Central Europe, Germany, Austria, Switzerland, the Benelux states, and some regions in France. So these are the main regions where you have a presence. And also the Islamic scene in my own country, in Germany, is really pretty much dominated by this Turkish state institution. And basically, if you go study in Germany, and you will find the DITIB. DITIB is called the German counterpart of the Turkish DIYANET. The DITIB, you will find a DITIB mosque in pretty much every town, even small town, in Germany, especially those regions where there are a lot of Turks. So really pretty much dominating also the practice of Islam in Germany, as well as that in Turkey. Then the institution has an own body for fatwas, for television, media, Hajj organization, and so on. And then in Turkey, you also have, in addition to the DIYANET, Imam Hatip High School education system, which is basically preparing for the career in the DIYANET. And then to become an imam in those mosques and to be hired there, you would need to visit the Ilahiyat faculties. So these also count into this sector of religious education and the practice of religion in Turkey. So how did the institution changed over the path of Republican history? And like I said, as a body, it's extremely volatile to political manipulation and stewardship, or whatever you want to call it. And so that means basically whoever was in power at the time in Turkey also implemented their vision of Islam, or their general vision how to design social relations in Turkey, also via this body. And I think that's also exactly the point why the study of this body is so interesting and so telling in general about Turkish history, about different political currents, about the zeitgeist in different historical settings in Turkey. And also because it's kind of always embodying this different spirits of the different contentious approaches to modernity, the different contentious modernities that are struggling against each other. Like the just two I mentioned. The first one, of course, the Kemalist one, more secularist, and then later the Islamist or post-Islamist, or Islamic conservative, whatever you want to call it, that we are seeing today. So it's really taking you into that core battle or core contentious movement in Turkish history that is flowing through those 100 years until today, basically. Yeah. So that's why it's so interesting and so crucial to understand this body and grasp what it's doing at different times. So between the 1920s and 40s, of course, Kemalist one-party rule, harsh secularization, and the DIYANET being part of this approach to Islam as a kind of rationalized, privatized religion that would fit in to this Kemalist nation-building process. Then the Democrat Party era, the first democratic election taking place in Turkey in 1950, and the Democratic Party coming to power, kind of rolling back the harsh measures of Kemalism without fully abandoning them. So this is what happens. For example, even the call for prayer, it was Turkified. Yeah, it was in the Turkish language in the 30s and 40s, and then the Democratic Party is walking back on that and is reintroducing the normal Arabic adhan that you all know. Yeah. And then the 1960s to the 70s, a kind of liberal and pluralistic era in Turkish history, and the DIYANET kind of not really embodying a pluralistic spirit or something like that, because that's like kind of contrarian to its foundational concept, but steadily changing along with the quickly changing political scene. Basically, you had new governments from left-wing to more nationalist right-wing coalitions and so on. Every 1 or 2 years changing governments, and then also the presence of the DIYANET changing. Then crucial period, and we could be coming more towards our today's era. The era of the 1960s and 70s was pretty volatile. So this era was cut off by a very harsh military coup in 1980, September 1980. And the military junta then introduced the so-called Turkish Islamic synthesis, which means to have a much more prominent role for religion in society to kind of pacify society and to quell communism and leftism, basically. So entirely new, different concept now coming into power, different concept of social engineering. Yeah. And what's interesting also about this period, the president heading the religious body at the time was this guy. He wrote a memoir, and you could basically also approach this entire history just by looking at the biographies and the mindsets and concepts, published works, articles, public speeches, and so on of the president of this religious authority, the DIYANET, yeah, as a kind of alternative methodological approach, I would say. And the interesting thing now is the military coup in 1980 basically turned the entire country on its head and tried to implement from scratch an entirely new political system, even new politicians. So it kind of had the idea that it could manufacture a new political scene and a new political life in the country that would be more orderly and more in line with the general Republican values, if you want, yeah. But the only thing that they are not turning on its head, and the only person in a leading state position surviving this harsh military coup is this guy, Tayyar Altıkılıç, the guy leading the DIYANET at the time of the military coup. And he just continues into the new era because the DIYANET is so important and so crucial for this new approach that would kind of directed against the left, directed against communism, and so on. And yeah, then from 2002 until today, you have, as you know, the AKP era, and yeah, again, the DIYANET in a very, very fundamental position for the concepts of social engineering put forth by this government now, which is again very different. So you have concepts now that are dreaming of things like creating a new pious youth and a pious generation that would lead Turkey into the future in a much more conservative and conservative Islamic kind of fashion. And so basically what you could just do, you could just take over this body from the top, and you would have this fantastic instrument to govern and to influence in every corner of the country, right? So that's why also for Turkish politicians, this this body is such an attractive and contentious field where different philosophies and ideas play out. So then to my second part of the talk, talking about more the realities of Turkish society, which of course are not as monistic or monocultural as this monolithic body was and is until today. So I will talk about the tariqas that posed a very fundamental challenge right from the beginning, basically until the AKP was elected, because the AKP was then completely in line with the tariqas, so there was no more contention there, and they basically agreed on the basic things. Then about Islamism as a political movement coming to the fore in the 1970s, and until also the formation of the AKP, which is a bit more complex, not directly an Islamist movement, but emerging from one. Then the Turkish Alevis, which is a different Islamic group or subculture, if you want. I don't know if you ever heard about it. I will explain in a minute who the Alevis are. Kind of constant, low intensity challenge, I would say, because this group is not a Sunni Muslim group, and yeah, very much different from Turkish mainstream Islam that the DIYANET, of course, embodies. Then the challenge emerging from Kurds and groups within Kurdish society that seek some kind of autonomous status, or at least cultural autonomy within Turkey for the Kurdistan region. And this challenge coming to the fore also in the 1980s. And then to sum up things a little bit and coming to the today's Turkey, the Diyanet then under Erdogan, and if there is something like a secularist challenge, because now it's the secularist side that is marginalized, of course, and not represented by this body anymore. So yeah, as I also named the talk, challenges emerging from civil society. There's an interesting point of contention here, where people have approaching things like in Turkey, everything is governed by the state, and you basically have only a weak civil society. But then we had the work of Professor Sherif Mardin, who was basically a pioneer of the study of religion in Turkish society, who suggested to also treat religious actors like the deeply rooted tariqas as a kind of civil society actor. So, and if we follow this understanding, then we will also see, and we can understand this challenge emerging from tariqas and their different approach to Islam. We can understand it as a challenge from civil society. And oops, yeah, I forgot this one. This, by the way, is Sheikh Mehmet Zahid Kotku, and he was the sheikh of the most important, basically organizing in underground cells, the most important Sufi tariqa in 20th century modern Republican Turkey. And from this tariqa, most of the Islamist politicians from the Milli Görüş movement emerged, which is interesting because also in different regions, Islamists often have a kind of clash with Sufi Islam, right? Because what they want is a more puristic and things like this. In Turkey, the Islamist movement actually evolves from the tariqat tradition, which is very unique for the Turkish case. And yeah, see the next one. Then what kind of challenge did the tariqas pose to the Diyanet and this kind of monolithic framework? Of course, just by their existence, and they basically also survived the ban of the Kemalists in the underground. Just by their pure and sheer existence, they already posed religious organization outside of the controlled framework, which in itself was not within the concept and was a thing that shouldn't have been. And then different tariqas posed different challenges. The one I just mentioned, led by Sheikh Mehmet Zahid Kotku, gave birth to political Islam, which was, of course, fundamental challenge to the Republic. And then there was an important different tariqa called the Süleymanciler, after its founder. And this tariqa basically constructed a parallel system outside of the state's framework, a parallel system of religious education and the education and raising of Imams. And there was a time in Turkish history where the Silakan here, where the Turkish state was in such dire need of imams that it had to hire imams raised within this community. So that was completely out of the box and completely out of the concept. And the kind of this tariqat was really successful, basically, then to influence the state system and to move its own people and have them hired in the state framework. But then, as I just mentioned, this challenge basically ceased to be a challenge because also the AKP emerged, and also the core political cadre of the AKP emerged from such tariqas, and mainly the Iskender Pasha tariqat. So they had their own men at the top, and there's no clash anymore, basically, because they fundamentally have the basic idea where they want to take Turkey and what would be the function of the Diyanet in this framework. The most elaborate critique of this religious body, the Diyanet, also emerged not directly from the tariqas, but from its wider framework. And what they basically wanted was to practice their own Islam, which was more orthodox, more conservative, if you want, than the one practiced by the state. This professor, a professor of constitutional law, Ali Fuad Bashkir, wrote the most elaborate critique of this system and basically defended a notion that the real laiklik, the laiklik means the Turkish concept of the secularism, where there is no separation of religion and state, but this stewardship or governance of religion by the state. He said that would be not real laiklik. The real laiklik would be non-intervention by the state and the abolishment of state control over religion. Of course, with the general motivation to allow different groups in society to practice their own Islam and be able to practice a more conservative and orthodox Islam. And this basic text, until today, it appeared in the 1950s, but it is the most elaborate critique, basically since 70 years until today, the most elaborate critique of this monolithic system. And of course, because it spoke to their primary motivation, was very successful in conservative and tariqa circles. Yeah, let me skip that one. Then you have another fundamental challenge by kind of neo-Sufic movements, you could call them, which are maybe a bit more akin to the large religious communities like Nahdlatul Ulama or Muhammadiyah in Indonesia. So basically religious-based mass organizations that, of course, also form bodies and entities completely outside of this controlled and strictly governed framework. One of them, you might have heard it before, is the movement inspired by Said Nursi and his writing, the Risale-i Nur, a very fundamental text for 20th century Turkey, and basically the most important theological and religious innovation in Turkish Islam taking place in the 20th century. And I believe some of his texts are also translated into Bahasa Indonesia. The Gülen movement, then, you probably have heard it, because also in Indonesia it established some schools. Also a challenge because of its political ambition and its kind of ways to infiltrate state institutions from the inside to gain control. So again, very different. The Nur movement, basically not very political, focusing on religious revival and the education of religious subjectivity, you could say. And then the Gülen movement, which is kind of copying this religious and theological innovation from Said Nursi, but kind of taking it into a much more political, ambitious framework. Then next challenge, Turkish Islamism, of course. Fundamental challenge, because political Islam is exactly the opposite to what the Kemalists imagined with the foundation of the DIYANET, which is a depoliticized, rationalized, privatized Islam. Of course, they want the exact opposite. Political Islam, as the word already says. I'm skipping a little bit here because I already mentioned that, and I'm running out of time. Basically, also the Islamists had ideas to reform the DIYANET or even abolish it. But then what happened in the end? The Islamists reformed themselves and went into the AKP, which is a kind of a mixture between a post-Islamism and a general conservative political right. So Islamism reformed itself and moved into this post-Islamist framework, which was more conservative, more nationalist, and so on. So basically this challenge kind of transformed, but then the Islamists itself had a change of heart about the DIYANET, because now they were in power. Now they had the power over the governing apparatus, and now it was suddenly pretty useful. So basically the weakness about this entire framework, again, is this political utilization, which you can just do by winning an election. So because there is no kind of inner pluralism or in a democratic government, so it's like a pyramid structure. So if you manage to take over the head of the structure, the tip of the pyramid, then the entire apparatus is yours and at your disposal, basically. So even by Erdogan in the 1980s and 90s, you have some talks about abolishing the DIYANET or fundamentally reforming it. But nothing was heard of this ever again since he came to power, because it's so useful. Then another different challenge, completely different in nature, the Alevis. I don't know if you heard Did you heard of this group, the Alevis in Turkey? No. Don't confuse with the Alawis. The Alawis, of course, more in this region, and down here, Latakia, down towards Syria. The Alevis in Turkey, completely different group. You could call them, if you want, the kind of Anatolian Shia, but you could also say, because it might be misleading, because it has nothing, not very much to do with kind of more formalistic and orthodox Iranian style with formal clerical hierarchies and so on. Iranian style Shia is very different from that. Oh, other people also kind of talk about the Alevis as a kind of heterodox folk Islam. So it is a kind of form of Shia, but very much apart from the Iranian Orthodox Shia. It has strong connections to local faith, local traditions, and elements of earlier Turkish religion before Turks accepted Islam, and also regional Christianity. And we can speculate that in the Middle Ages, Anatolia was pretty much an Alevi territory. But as soon as formal power and the great sultanates were established, orthodoxy came in, and yeah, the kind of the Sunni centers tried to push back against the Alevism. And from this map, you can see that there is a concentration in a more Anatolian hinterland that is less accessible, and where the people could hide better from the central authority. And today, we don't know this exactly, because the Turkish state formally, it had required, I think it's also the case in Indonesia, if I'm not mistaken, to write and state the religious affiliation on the identity card. And there was just one Islam. So if you're a Muslim, you're Muslim. Doesn't matter if you are Levi, if you are Turkish Hanafi, or the Kurds, for example, they are Shafi'i. And all these kinds of different affiliation doesn't matter. It's just one category, one monolithic category established there. So we don't know this figure exactly, but we might have an educated guess that the Turkish population today, that we have around 10 to 15% of the population in the Alevi faith. And the Alevi challenge, it is more like a low-level challenge, I would say. There is often no direct confrontation here or something like that, but there is this general tension that the Alevis pay basically for religious services, imams, mosque, and everything, the entire body. They pay with it with their taxes, but they don't get representation in the body and no religious education in their traditional faith and their beliefs. So if you want, you can say it's like a taxation without representation. Basically paying, if you want, for their own assimilation. So the state would then found DIYANET mosque in an Alevi village here in this in these regions in central Anatolia, and yeah, the Alevis can then decide if they want to do their prayers in the mosque, or organize their own their own houses of worship, which are called the Cem-evi. Cem is called this ceremony in Alevism, which includes prayer, but also ritual dance, ritual singing, and so on. All of which are things that are pretty much unimaginable, of course, in mainstream Turkish Sunni Islam. Another point of contention about these Cem-evis is just basic recognition as house of worships. So Alevi association form houses, these Cem-evis, but then have to completely pay double. They pay their taxes for the DIYANET and pay their own association to have their own houses of worship. So this results in a continuing debate on the inclusion into the DIYANET of the Alevi faith, or if they should be an additional structure, the second one, probably more likely. Then, yeah, I think I finish in 5 minutes. Another challenge, the Kurds, which also have a problem similar to the Alevi problem, but not so much as a religious minority, because they are also Sunni Muslim in the vast majority, but in terms of language, because there is no different religious service and no different practice other than the Turkish language practiced in the DIYANET mosque. So what happened? The Kurdish movement, basically a more leftist movement, but also to challenge the authority and the monopoly of the DIYANET, introduced this new idea called the Civil Friday prayers. And they basically just took everyone out of the DIYANET mosque, put them on the street or in an open space, and had an open prayer there under the sun. So what they did is that, and of course, with a very high and strong symbolism there. Under Erdogan, so I'm talking about today's Turkey now, also coming to the end of my presentation. Under Erdogan, really, probably the strongest politicization of the DIYANET system, because it's so crucial for the basic designs and the basic political ideas of Erdogan and his party, the AKP. Yeah, and also reflecting that is a manifold increase. I have found much different figures on it, but it's the budget really exploded during the AKP era, and now you kind of have an interesting irony there in the Turkish history, that the Turkish secularists who established this institution are now themselves marginalized by this very institution because of the way they designed it. Not as a pluralistic body or as a body with inner autonomy, inner democracy or something like that, but just as a body like a pyramid, and you take the tip and you have the entire thing in your hands. So now you have the secularists basically not represented by it. But interestingly, there is no such thing emerging as a secularist challenge to this new framework. And I think the reason for it, I think, kind of in a statist mindset, which originally founded this institution. Then maybe they hope to take over again themselves again. Loyalty to Republican institutions, and basically also the problem that religion is just not their strongest pursuit, and they have little clarity basically over how their own DIYANET or how a more reformed DIYANET would look like. It's just not the first area where they develop political ideas. Yes, and to conclude, I think at the moment, because it's so useful for each of the governing groups and whoever will come to govern the country in the future, because it's so useful, there seems little prospect for a fundamental reform or democratization, autonomization of the DIYANET. Yeah, for this very reason. And also because of a general clashes in Turkish society. I mean, you have all these groups that I just mentioned who would have an interest in reforming the DIYANET and this general monolithic body into a more pluralistic framework. But all of these groups are not working together. They just put forth their own concept and their own ideas, but do so individually and not as a coordinated force. If they would move together, okay, maybe there would be a chance for reform, but they don't, because, for example, I mean, even religious Kurds, for example, have problems working together with Alevis. And you have different contentions and clashes, fragmentations, polarizations in society that stop this. And yeah, but I think what may be likely be established in the nearer future will be some structure managing the Alevi affairs, but separate from the DIYANET as a separate entity. And then in general, we can speculate what the future holds really for Islam and this civil society contestations. In Turkey, might be the status quo, might be a rise in popularity of alternative forms of Islam, or just even general alienation from religion. But that, of course, remains to be seen. Thank you for listening and awaiting your questions.
Yes. Very. So, we got a little bit enlightened by Diana, which is similar to Indonesia, yeah, and we kind of see how a revolutionary secularist state invade in Turkey, and how this administration, systematically shaped Islamic society in Turkey up to now, with all these dimension of problem challenges that experience from the Turkish society themselves and the minorities such as the Alawis and then the Kurds. Maybe with there's another minority in Turkey, so like the Armenian.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Christians, of course, are completely outside of this framework anyways, and they manage their own affairs.
Okay. Yeah, 2% here, and then followed with one radio. Okay. Thank you very much for time. So, my name is Zul. I'd like to ask you about Janet in the urban era.
Indeed.
We know that the tradition of Janet, firstly, is to keep Turkey as a secularist state, to ensure that the religion doesn't interfere the secularist state. But under the administration or the regime of Erdogan, it's completely a different thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Because Erdogan has been practicing
because of his effort to bring back Islam to its conservative and its root in Turkey. Do you think that this Erdogan's movement to be the longest president in Turkey to bring back Islam as a victory in Turkey has a significant effect on DIYANET as the keeper of the moderation in Turkey's religion? Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Izu. Yeah, thank you, Izu. There is one question about Erdogan and the second, yeah, but you know, three years. We'll be done by okay. We can go to the second one.
Okay, my name is Doris. Thank you. First of all, I would like to say thank you for the presentation, Dr. Jan. I think it's quite enlightening for us to know about the DIYANET movement in the Turkey as the Turkey's highest religious authority. Some people criticize that the DIYANET is practice too much business because it controls all the religious activities and it leads to the commercialization of religion. I would like to know that how is the response of the some other Islamist movement because the commercialization of the religious is not aligning with the Islamic values. Thank you.
Second question. Very up to date information as well. Yeah, oh yeah. Thank you very much, Dr. Vömel. You have mentioned about social engineering and how that has been used. My question, what kind of society Erdogan actually wants to engineer? What kind of society? And whether it is successful or not? Because I think Malaysia with Mahathir did the same, and Malaysia also Mahathir established some kind of institution to control Islamic teaching, and he specifically wanted to establish capitalist and also modernist Muslim. How about it is in Turkey? Thank you.
Yeah. Answer?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, all three of you. Very good, very interesting questions. Let me start, I think, with the commercialization of religion. I haven't heard this criticism a lot, but there are some forms of kind of televangelism, you would say, in a US context. And those draw a lot of criticism. And this is also a kind of commercialization because as hugely popular TV shows. But they are not directly taking place in the DIYANET framework. And because it's like it's a state institution, and it is not primarily acting as a economic force or economic actor. So I think this criticism is more lower in the list. It's an interesting aspect, and there's such debates in Turkey, but not so much related to the DIYANET, but about different things like that. Yeah, and in general, politicization is the more crucial and the more contentious issue here, rather than commercialization. And then I think question 1 and 3 are very much interrelated. Diminishing return question and social engineering. It is, I think, it is always the same with the social engineering. You have it working out to a certain degree, and certainly Erdogan and his government changed Turkey fundamentally and really reconstructed the state apparatus from the inside, and even broke the power of the military and military tutelage, which was a factor throughout Republican history until the latest coup of 2016. Erdogan managed also to subdue the military and push it out of politics for good. Like there's no chance of return of the military mingling in Turkish politics anymore at this point of time, and no other political force, civil political force, was able to do such a thing, to achieve such a feat. Yeah, but of course, then also on the plus side or on the successful side, you have now, if you are a religious family, for example, and you want to send your children to a religious school and receive an Islamic education along with the normal subjects in school, you now in today's Turkey have the opportunity to do so everywhere, not just in the largest cities or not just in certain concentrations or so. Really, in the mass and in the field, everywhere you have the opportunity to do so. And also, these schools are basically the most, the best schools. They have the best building. They have the best finances. They have good teachers and so on because there is the money. So a lot of money is pumped into that parallel educational system. So there's a lot of things that worked out, and also today, like the more religiously inclined part of Turkish society today feels at ease. They feel they can be themselves, and it is their country. Yes, they are not minoritized or marginalized anymore. So this is like the success side. But on the other hand, like the dreams of these social engineerings and the far goals, I mean, they are huge. They are gigantic. Basically, forming a new pious generation and a new pious Turkey that would then rise to its former glory of the Ottoman Empire, and so on and so on and so on. It's big dreams, and of course not very realistic. And of course, again, making the kind of same mistakes that the Kemalists do, just putting too much into religion. Like, just as the Kemalists viewed religion as a hindrance of modernization, now it's the fundament of modernization, and it's just putting too much into the concept of religion, which might not be exactly realistic. And then you have something like you called it diminishing returns. Like in every design, or the same thing happened in the Kemalist era, of course, with the social engineering. It works to a certain degree, but it also gives rise to the counter reaction and the counter forces, and just people saying that I don't want to be manipulated by the state, and why should Islam be that what Erdogan told us? And like, maybe Islam is something that I want, and my family practices, and something I will not be lectured by the government what my religion is, and so on. So the success already has ingrained, already breeds in itself the counter reaction. And you can see that today, like in the Turkish youth. I mean, it's not a very dominant trend, but there are some indications, from social research and surveys that the Turkish youth is more alienated towards religion and practicing less, not doing the 5 prayer times anymore, not going to a mosque anymore. Yeah, things like that. They basically that are just straight outcomes of politicization of religion.
We will take now 2 questions from the. Oh, can I ask? No. Sure. Okay.
Oh yeah.
Social type of organization where they manage to build their own hospital, education, schools, and sort of things like that, using religion as as collective members, and then making the capital sustain.
Yeah.
That is the first one. But second one, just remember about this moderation. Do you think when I was in Turkey, I see that people are not able to come out and say, moderation. Society has been kind of very much fractured, likely, or highest Muslim term that, or secular. So there is no in between. There is not that kind of community that able to say that they embrace secular, but also they are highest Muslim. I mean, maybe it's kind of a little bit, inside things going on, but they cannot express it.
Yeah. Agreed.
So is it related to the DIYANET also or what? I mean, it just very obviously seen in public life. So yeah, that is true. And we go to Nizam. Oh, sorry, Aida? Yes. Okay. So Aida.
My question is regarding the other that you have mentioned several times before. According to the that as I have heard, the other didn't how to say didn't do that doesn't do any commercial thing. That why so far because why? Because the other is part of presidency. It's not government. It's not ministry. It is. I mean that whenever whoever the president comes to the office, so the president can control and manage directly with the DIYANET because and for me DIYANET is right hand for the president to do a president to do everything regarding one religious issue. Okay, that is my statement, and my question is actually relating to the Gulen movement. Gulen movement, as we know that Gulen movement was part of HND before the breakdown, as we know that happened in 2012, and you know statement. And it was said the the port of the AKP was depend on Gulen movement at the time,
Yeah.
to say. But actually, we see in the election in 2013, oh, sorry, in 2014, when AKP lost when AKP lost the vote from Gulen movement, it didn't influence the vote that AKP got at the time. So, how do you think, and what do you think? How will AKP tackle this? I mean, the vote that they get when they work with Gulen movement, and after they spread with Gulen movement. That is my question.
Thank you very much. So, if this really simple question, I'm very curious about the Alif and Ifrit.
Alevi.
Well, yeah, I'm living. It's really hard to pronounce it. What I know from the yeah, yes, to like German. It's is there the German really 24 they have in German and about how about the recognition from the government of Germany if they being recognized by the government? If so, what about the education? And chamber that's that so just education, right?
Yes.
So I'm sure. Thank you very much.
Okay, let's. Okay, thank you all again. Where to start? All very good question again. Thank you. Maybe I'll start with the last one. Of course, the migration, labor migration, and then following families or in times of political crisis, intensifying migration. Also put like Alevis, just like everybody else, into the migration settings in Europe and mainly in Germany. And you have Alevi associations all over the place. I would recommend you to visit one of their ceremonies, and they are free to visit. There's no hindrance for anyone. I went to one. It's fascinating. So you can do the same, and you can experience the difference in their prayer and their ceremonial life. And so what is interesting basically about this migration setting is that as soon as everything goes into migration and there's a free political sphere and no such thing as DIYANET or like an overbearing political control mechanism or something exists in Europe. So what basically happens that suddenly what is monolithic in Turkey or what is like pushed underground or pushed out of sight in Germany and the other European countries, it flourishes and becomes visible. So suddenly you have all the colors of the rainbow of Turkish Islam in Europe. And this is really fascinating, I think. And this is basically allowed then by the setting of the migration. And even for political, not just for the Alevis, also for political Islam, Gülen movement, everyone, you name it, all of those people are very present in Germany and all the different countries. This, I think, is fascinating. State recognition, yes, they have not applied for the full status that is in the German case now, that is granted, for example, to to the churches. The only religious community of Islamic affiliation that has done so is the Ahmadiyya, actually. They are recognized. They have this Ahmadiyya in Germany has the same status like every Christian church. Interesting detail, but for example, in Austria, they enforced the recognition, and in Austria, every religious Islamic community has to write like a formal statement and register with the state. So there are 2 or 3 different Alevi groups, and all the Sunni groups are also registered formally, and they have the same status like the Christian churches in Austria for that case. Then commercialization, yes, like I said, is not so much directly affiliated with the DIYANET, but in general is also a very broad social development, I would say, because of the formation of a pious middle and upper class that is urban, economically successful, has good jobs, good education, good income, and all that, and then just spends their money and has a middle class lifestyle with all the luxuries and all the nice things involved. Yeah. So I think is commercialization also comes from there, and yeah, if you see a documentary or some things which allow an insight in their lifestyle, it's very interesting, and it's of course very very commercialized. And in certain areas of Istanbul or in certain restaurants and so on, you can witness that very good, and I think it's a good opportunity for participant observation research. But yeah, some of this has been done. Then yeah, the question of moderation in society and the kind of middle ground. Yes, I agree with this. I agree with this view or this observation made in Turkish society. I think is one of the fundamental differences between Turkey and Indonesia, because here I think there are more avenues to explore such thing or express it in public. In Turkey, I think the path of the modernization, it was harsher, and therefore also led to a more harsher social fragmentation and polarization. And I think there is a middle ground actually, and it's not even so small, but it's not so visible because it doesn't have language. It doesn't have a political language or way to express itself. So I think that kind of disappears, and you see the big blocks mainly becoming public. And when you just look at the election, I mean, the split is almost 50-50, which is also pretty extraordinary, interesting thing. So yeah, it's a path-dependent thing, I would say, because of harsher modernization and secularization, and also then the other side becoming harsher and more authoritarian in their measures, and trying to do more with social engineering attempts. Yeah, and about Gülen'in AKP, I'm not sure if I got the question fully. Yeah, the general trajectory of this affair was basically Gulen movement and the AKP having a common transformative project in Turkish society and regarding the Turkish state. As soon as this project was close to fulfillment and reaching its goals, both of these came to the point. What is happening now as we subdued our common enemies? Who will come out on top between us two? So, and then everything fell apart, and you have this process starting in 2013, and then the full catastrophe with the coup attempt in 16, and since then the Turkish government basically prosecuting their former allies as public enemy number one and terrorist organization, even until here in Indonesia. Yeah. We just had a meeting with the Turkish ambassador and in BRIN, and we have the Kepala Agama from the religious department, and he was really proud and said, yeah, our boss's name, his name is Najib. Yeah, Najib, I remember you sent your kid to this great Turkish schools. Wonderful. Congratulations. I kind of missed the whole thing that happened in 7 years. And he kind of thought like there are sturdy friends, and the ambassador was like, I have to make an intervention here. And then he went into a monologue how horrible and cruel and evil this movement is, and that he requests the Indonesian side to
Okay, all right.
welcome. Yeah.
You must stop. Take your time. Have yourself. Like that? Oh, yeah.
Yeah.